All right. Good morning. It's morning for me. I'm out in the Phoenix area, so it's still morning. But good morning, and again, good afternoon or good evening if you're joining us from overseas today. Welcome to the October web tips from CPS here. My name is Casey Kolowinski. This is only my second web tips that I've done since working with Clear Process Solutions. So if we have any technical difficulties or something, just let me know in the Q&A, and I'll take care of it as quick as I can. But what we're here to talk about today is going to be advanced CSS in Composer. So I want to take you into some details about all of that, but I'll give you a quick background about myself if you haven't met me before, and as well as just kind of some housekeeping things for the way the meeting's going to go. But thank you all for joining. We appreciate it very much, and we hope that you continue to get some useful tidbits out of these meetings. Because it's a webinar, we've got you guys muted, but if you have any questions, I've got the Q&A screen right up there visible, so I'll see it immediately and can address it as quick as possible. All right. And just so you guys are aware, I'm a little less of a PowerPoint type of person, and I'm a little more hands-on. So there's not a whole lot of actual slide content because I want to show you what I want to talk about a little bit more than I want to just have you read items on a sheet. But about me, if you don't know, I'm Casey Kolowinski. I've been working with CPS for, I think actually tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary with CPS. But I've been working in tech for more than 10 years through a little bit of everything. I've done a little bit of everything, but I've been working with process improvement and automation tools for now 7.5 or so of those 10 years. I worked for Winshuttle in both their support department and their services department for 6.5 years. And really, I'm just here. I'm just here to make customers' lives better. That's generally what I like to do. Winshuttle helps with that. Other products help with that. But in the end, it's all about customer service, and I love making life easier for you guys. So that's why I do what I do. So today we're going to go through just a few things. I know it says advanced CSS, but in order to do that, I want to give just a few minute overview about CSS from a baseline level. So that might be review for some of you in this situation. But I want to just talk through it just to make sure we have a baseline understanding of what we're talking about. From there, we're going to talk about the general structure of a CSS file. And how that plays out and the basics of what you're looking at to do with those pieces. We're going to talk about actually utilizing it with Composer in a couple of different ways than I think maybe the normal user would think to do. And then we're going to get into a little deeper discussion about different selectors, how to find the item on the page that you want to style with your CSS, etc. That'll get a little more into that advanced level of pieces, and I'll show you a few tricks and things that CPS can offer you if you want some help with that, etc. And again, if you have any questions or want to interrupt me for anything, please do. I don't personally like the webinar style. I would love to just have a nice discussion with you guys, but with the webinar, we're gonna keep it muted for now and just keep moving forward. Okay, so we're gonna just leave it on this slide because there's just more discussion points. But what is CSS? Now, you may or may not know that it's called Cascading Style Sheets, which is just a fancy word, fancy acronym. But if you think about the web, there's essentially 3 core components to any web page that you visit out there, from Google to YouTube to anything. There's deeper pieces of it, but the basic structure involves 3 things: the HTML, which is essentially your skeleton, right? So it's going to decide exactly what items are displayed on your screen, like a text box or a picture or things like that. So your HTML gives you that skeleton. Then comes the CSS. The CSS makes your text box or your picture look however you want it. It helps you style and design how the page is going to look. And the third core component is JavaScript. And JavaScript gives your items an action. So it's nice and good to have your skeleton and your style, but without JavaScript, nothing actually functions. So in this case, we're going to dig in really deep into the CSS and how powerful it can be in showing you, in making these forms more what you want out of them instead of just a basic web form. Because we all know Composer with its gray palettes can be a little boring to look at, and it doesn't let you brand, for your company specifically, etc. So we'll talk about a little more of that as we go. But next part of it was we're gonna dig into kind of the idea of and the structure of a CSS file. So we're gonna went too far there. Let me get out of that real quick. Yeah, somewhere. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. So the basic idea on this CSS is that you're trying to find your different items that are present on your web page. And then from there, once you've found them, you're making a set of rules to say, hey page, anytime that I run into this item that we've selected, do this to it. And that can be anything from changing the border color to the font size, etc. Okay. And so in its basic form, a CSS file is going to look kind of like what you see on the screen here. And so you have a line here that's got your selector, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. And it's enclosed in curly brackets. That's just the edges of the container of the rules. From there, you're working with different lines to be able to do different actions. And we'll talk through a little bit more of those together. But the idea is that anything within the brackets is going to apply to whatever selector we've done up here. Okay. So the main selectors are called classes or IDs. So if we look out here, I'm going to dig in here into the HTML. And so I'm looking at this label element. Everybody has put a Winshuttle label element on their form before. If I inspect that with Chrome, it takes me into this nice debugging utility that shows me a couple different things. Right here on the Elements tab, this is all of our HTML, so it's our skeleton, right? It tells you what's going on. And if I highlight things, you can see that it's choosing different pieces to show up on the screen it's highlighting. And we'll get into a little bit more of this in a minute too. But for right now, this label gets shown right here. This label is not just So the HTML piece is this div, right? This div is like a divider, okay? But it can have properties, and the properties are these fields called ID, class, style, and there's infinite number of these things. But the main two that are used out in the world are the ID and the class. The ID is always going to be unique. So there will not be another form label 39 anywhere on this form. The class, however, is more like a grouping. So I may have multiple form-labels anywhere in my form. And so that allows you the flexibility with CSS to style either individual elements or groups of elements, okay? And so the basic functionality, if we go back to our structure, we have to think about the syntax of how to write what we're trying to do. And so the basic ideas are that if you are trying to do the group or the class of things, you need to do a period before the name of the class that you're trying to utilize. Period says find class with this name, okay? And for ID, the period is just replaced with a pound sign. Pretty simple. However, we don't know how to get that, right, in general, okay? So to figure out what you want to try to style, we utilize our Chrome debugger a little deeper. Okay, so if I'm just poking around my form and I say, I kind of want to understand how to change something to do with this button, okay? So we go into our console window here. It's called the developer tools in Chrome. And it's a lot easier to use in Chrome or Firefox than it is Internet Explorer. It's doable. It's just a lot easier to handle with Chrome or Firefox. You can use F12 to get that open typically. So once you've had that open, you find your element that you're going to utilize and you right click on it and you choose Inspect. That's going to go ahead and find it in your HTML or very close to it. You may see, if I hover over this, there's still a couple different things in here, but it gets you pretty close. From here, you're looking to the right side to see what's being applied to it in its styles. So you can see in this case, we are aligning the text to the center. We are giving it a different background or a different color for the font. And we're doing several different things here. But this is a really nifty tool because this can let you try to change these styles on the fly. And so you can see what it's going to look like without having to do anything to your files or redeploy your solutions, etc. So in this case, if I want to change the color, I'm going to just try to change this to a different hex code value, and that's just a fancy term for a different color. So let's do a gray. Okay, so you can see that didn't actually change the color of the text visibly right there, right? But what we can see is that now if I hover, my text is gray and it matches that color that we did down there. And the reason being that we went in and we actually found that for buttons, we're only going to apply this text color when it's either hovering or active. And I'll talk about that a little bit too. So the idea is here, right? Once we've found our item, we have a couple different things we can use to try to build our CSS file. We have the ID or the class, or we can do different things. Instead of using the class, we in this case, we're saying we want to take every input that has an attribute that's called type, and it equals button. And so you can see this is an input with a type that equals button. And there's a few special states of what happens when the button is hovered over or clicked on, etc. And in this case, we want to make sure we get the color right for what happens when we hover over it. Okay? And so that is done with this kind of status here, and you can see those choices by clicking on this option here to see the different choices. And there's so much to learn with CSS that I'm not trying to cover all of it here. What I would recommend is that there's a really easy and nice site called W3 Schools that contains pretty much anything you could ever want to know about CSS in more detail. So if you go there, they've got all sorts of different items here, and they explain to you exactly what you're doing with how to find what you're looking for. But as far as the composer is concerned, right, this is a great way to try to play with it. So if I decide I want my background to be red, I can just try red. And now when I hover over it, my button is red. And so now what you can see is, because I did it here, I either can choose to use an ID or a class to build this type of syntax, or if it's already styled in an existing style sheet, this right here, you notice the curly brackets, is what you would take. So I could just copy and paste this into my existing file to help manipulate that further. Okay. All right, so that's a good way to kind of go find and play with how it looks for you. And once you figure out, so there's a ton of different properties: border, color, font size, border bottom, background color, that site, the W3 Schools site that I showed you, will help you kind of understand all the different possibilities that you can come up with. Or if you're really good at searching for Google, right, you can just say, hey, I want to change the button background color CSS. And the top answers will probably get you exactly what you need to know about that specific piece. But in general, you're working to find your selector, and then you're adding each property line by line that you want to change to it. Could be as few as one. It could be 20 or 30 different properties. Depends on what you want it to look like and how you want to deal with it. And so once you've worked on building this, how do you integrate it into Composer, right? That's a big piece that we want to talk about. So in Composer, I'm sure some of you have noticed that there's a custom styles section over here in your solution tree. And if you open that, you can copy and paste your code, such as this. If we wanted to take this form text box, we can paste it right in there to get everything put in. And then obviously if you've got different errors and things like that, you can just double check them. In this case, these are more of just warnings, so we're okay. One other thing here, the important tag when you're working with CSS files with Winshuttle is typically important. And what it does is it basically tells the system to override any other style that's been found in the system and use what we've determined. Okay. The second way to integrate your CSS would be to save this in a .css file somewhere out on your SharePoint site, or somewhere that can be referenced through a URL. Doesn't have to be SharePoint. But basically, if you put that file out there, you can add an external reference to that, and it will do the same thing. It will utilize that nicely. However, that's not always the smoothest way to do this when you're working with multiple environments, a dev, a QA, a production. So, and that's because you may be pointing to the CSS template that's in one environment, but people may not have permissions to that in all the environments. So because of the deployment profiles in Composer, we can't do this. So this doesn't work very well moving across environments if you've got strict permissions. So CPS, our company, has a special way we can help you out if you decide that you want to go with a more customized CSS solution that maximizes your ability to be flexible between environments. And essentially what we do is we work with we have a snippet of JavaScript code that we have built in that we can offer you that will allow you to find out what site you're on when you launch the form, dev, QA, or prod, and based on that, it will load up the external file from the proper environment so that you make sure that you can maintain your permissions and your users are only getting the files that they intend to. So that also gives you the ability to have separate files so you can test more styles in dev or QA, etc. So if you are interested in any of that, please reach out to us and we can help you get that set up for your solution. We also have essentially a built-in, it's kind of a pre-built template that can take your form from looking like the basics to looking more along these lines. And this is an example solution, so it doesn't make much sense. All it does is show you all the different elements and what they may look like. But what we have is we have the ability to change these colors quickly to match up with the designs that you have for your branding or whatever you decide. And we can quickly show you what that's going to look like with the way we spit it out, so you can understand exactly what each item that you have will look like. So you can see we've got the selectable table with alternating colors, etc. So again, if that's something that you would like and you like the look of this type of form, reach out to us and we can help you implement that as well. And then lastly, I want to show one other way for you to be able to control what you're styling. So every field on your form has a property called class names. And so what that will do is it will actually add, if I look at this item, you can see this has class, form component, form dropdown. When you fill out the property in Composer, it will actually add a class onto this for you, so you can control your own grouping. So if you want every text box to be a special text box, or you want 4 text boxes to have a yellow color versus a gray color, that property, you can type in anything you want in there, testing, whatever, it will work. So where we use this the most is typically in a solution where the entry data into SAP needs to be all capitalized all the time, because that's how SAP takes it. So instead of having to set up a rule on every field in your form to make sure that it gets capitalized when the user types in their data, you can use something like this, an uppercase class name, and we have, again, a set of JavaScript that can help take that and work with that to quickly and efficiently allow you to uppercase all your fields on the form the only effort that's necessary is to come in here and type in uppercase in these class names, and the rest is done on the back end. So again, an opportunity, if you'd like those types of ideas, please reach out to us and we can talk about how to get those implemented for you. So I think that generally covers what I wanted to cover today. Is there any questions about that, or things you can think of that we could implement in a future session to delve in a little deeper? If you have any of that, please put it in the Q&A box. And get my PowerPoint back up here for us. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to my spiel about CSS. And remember that CSS is a universal language. So that means if you're utilizing other products that have the CSS capabilities, you can do CSS for them with the same general concepts. This isn't necessarily composer specific. We can do this in several different items. And if you have any, always let us know if you have any questions that you don't think of while we're talking, or if you have any ideas for future web tips. We're here just to share bits and pieces of these products with our users, and doing them once a month. For a lot of years, we start to run into duplicates, and so help us if you think of something or want us to do something deeper. Please let us know. And then just a couple of housekeeping reminders to finish this. There's all of our webinars are on demand on our site. If you want to reach out to the YouTube's site, you can see everything that we've done. Also on our website, you can fill out a little questionnaire. There's a questionnaire that helps you determine the eligibility or the feasibility of your processes and how well they would automate and how well we can help you automate them. And then we also are working a lot on Foundation to Evolve migrations these days, as Winshuttle has released their Evolve product. So if you need any assistance or have any questions about any of that, please reach out to us too. And speaking of Evolve, our next web tip will be next month on the 19th. And the topic looks like it's going to be Introduction to Winshuttle Evolve. I'm not sure who's presenting that one, but it's definitely not me right now. So yeah, again, all the recordings are out on our YouTube video. And if you have any ideas, the info@clearprocesssolutions.com is a great place to send those requests or suggestions. And with that, just a quick reminder that, if you don't have solution care, this just a quick show that, what we can provide through our solution care network goes above and beyond what the Winshuttle maintenance product can provide you with your contract. And we've got experts, right? We've done these items for years and years and years, and we're a great resource. If you don't have solution care, we highly recommend you discuss it with our team and reach out and talk through what we can help provide with that. So with that, I think that would be the end of this. If there's no other questions, I hope that you have a good rest of your day. I'm taking a good long weekend for my 6-year-old's birthday today. And from there, we'll talk in the future. Thank you for coming, and we hope to see you back next time.